Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Zombie Train. This is episode number 288, and I am your host, Ellis, otherwise known as Train Man. This week we have a question from East Rail 11, and it's actually about the plan itself, so this is interesting. And I will get on that just 1 second. So, the wording of the question goes as follows. How did you get the idea for the zombie train? Like, when the Great Panic happened, was the zombie train the first thing that came to mind, or did you just consider running? Also, how did you escape Rock Island and meet up with the others on your train? I assume you mean Rhode Island. I originally wrote the 20-page The End of Days, which came out years and years ago. It actually came out 6 years ago, almost exactly 6 years ago now. And that's amazing that this has had this kind of longevity, this series. But, to get more into it, so, the zombie train, the plan itself was something that I had come up with before the Great Panic. I hadn't had the idea for everyone. Like, I hadn't pulled that together, but I had been to Steamtown a couple of times, and I thought, you know, if it were to come to this, I'd read, the book by Max Brooks, The Zombie Survival Guide, and I figured, okay, it's probably a good idea to have a zombie plan, just in case. And, having gone to Steamtown twice at that point, I looked at 3254 particularly, and went, maybe this could be something that would be useful in the event of an apocalypse. And so I started juggling ideas. How would it be useful? How would it be used? Who would I want to have with me, and how would I organize that? What would we do? How would we get out there? And I wrote out this plan. It was very rough. It didn't have a lot of, it didn't really have a lot of detail. It sort of went like, get to Scranton as soon as, it becomes apparent that this is a big deal. Get to Scranton, secure the facility, take the engine out within, a day. Because you don't want to linger in a place like that. Because it's dense and it isn't very defensible. You at least have your backs to the river at the museum itself, but there are too many directions that zombies could come from, and we did figure this out. When we were there, it sort of, when we were trying to get out of Scranton, it became readily apparent that the dangers that I was concerned about were real. Because we started having zombies coming in, like, from the mall side, and that's really where the density in Scranton is. We had eyes on the mall, but it was too large of a front to deal with only, a dozen people or whatever we had. It really wasn't that many. Because we knew gasoline was going to be scarce, and it was, okay, so we have basically one tank of gas's worth. When it starts to become an issue, you get filled up. If you can't do that, like if there's a gas shortage, if there's a panic, then you just go. You take the vehicles that have enough gas and you go. And that's what we had to do. We only had a couple. We got out there, and we did have enough gas to make that trip. It's only 150 miles, 200 miles, something like that. It's something that you can reasonably do on a full tank of gas on some cars. Not all, but some. And we were lucky that there were a couple of, people that had full tanks of gas that could make it that distance. And so we went. The rest of the people, and this was part of the plan, it was, we'll come back with the train. We'll go out there, we'll get the engine, we'll hook up some stuff, and we'll come back to Rhode Island to pick up other survivors, pick up other family members or whomever. And the regrouping point would be at a military base, a military facility. And the only one that exists that's along a railroad right-of-way and is, out of harm's way as well, because it's in a fairly rural area, generally speaking, is Quonset. So I had that worked out. I had the idea, we'll go, we'll get the engine. Whoever can get out there will go, we'll get the engine. I'll be with them, of course, because I'm the one who knows how to run the thing. But there's no set vehicles, there are no set people necessarily. It was whoever was available. So, get out there, get the train, or get the locomotive, hook up some passenger cars and some freight cars, store some stuff, grab supplies, whatever, make our way back across Massachusetts. This is there was a route that I had planned ahead of time. That was one of the things that I did figure out, well before the date. And thankfully it really worked out. There wasn't, there weren't really any major issues in getting back from Scranton. So, we managed that. It was a learning experience for me. And then the next part of the plan was to get down to Quonset and pick up some people, and then ... There wasn't really a destination planned after that, because I had no idea where the largest pockets of resistance would be. It makes sense that they would be on the West Coast, because there are a lot of military bases out there. You have the Pacific, you have the Navy's Pacific Fleet, which is largely where you have, you have a lot of manpower and material out there. The other place would have been like Newport News, Virginia, but the East Coast being so dense was far more dangerous than a lot of areas on the West Coast. So it worked out that way. I'm sure the Navy had a hell of a time securing, like a beachhead and the area around there, which is San Francisco and Oakland, and, that's very, very dense. And it's not really particularly defensible, especially from the inside, I guess. But they did manage to do it, and that was the first... I think that was probably a lot of development of tactics that happened over there, but that really has nothing to do with our zombie plan. So, like I said, it was really rough. It was... you have 3 phases. You have getting to Scranton, getting to Quonset for the people that are not able to come with us to Scranton, because it wasn't worth taking everyone. The plan was to take maybe, 6 or 8 people, whoever we thought would be able to defend the roundhouse, as well as helping us, work up the engine. Able-bodied people, that sort of thing. We ended up taking what? Like, how many people did we take? I can't remember. It was not that many. It was like, it must have been like 6 people. I can't remember now. I'd have to go back into the original plan and look at my notes. But, we got there, we had just enough people to secure the place, and, sort of hold off the zombies, and then act as, assistance to the hostling, where we had people, out there as brakemen or whatever in the yard, sort of guiding us through and throwing switches and doing that sort of thing. That was, that was that. I hadn't really thought about how many people it would really take. I hadn't broken down jobs for everyone. But it was the sort of thing where it worked out to be, half a dozen people or whatever that, half a dozen people or whatever that ended up being out there in Scranton with us. That was just people we brought along. We didn't meet anybody on the way. Well, we did, but we didn't take anybody with us, I should say. So, obviously that wasn't in the plan. Meeting people was not in the plan. Picking up people kind of was in the plan. I'm not sure we did that. I don't think we did that. I feel like I'd remember. Did we? Yeah, no, we did. We did pick up some people. We picked them up in, like, Springfield or something. And that was sort of where the utility of the zombie train really started to come to light for me. Again, this was very loose. I had no idea how any of it was going to work after, it sort of went, get the train, get to Quonset, meet up in Quonset, get everybody on the train, and then go somewhere, wherever there's pockets of resistance. You can't stop the train. You're not going to be choked up by cars on the highway, that sort of thing. Obviously, there were plenty of incidents where we ran into other stopped trains, and I didn't have a concrete plan for that. But the fact that we had this rolling fortress, that was really all that mattered. And it developed a lot over time. The different coaches, I did that special on all the different coaches a while back, and that was a big deal. That was a big change. Finally we had real bunks and a leisure space and a place to cook and a place to plan and that sort of thing. None of that was anything that I had thought of. A lot of people have these very, very intricate zombie plans, or had, I suppose. Well, still do. People make them now, even now, because we know how real the danger is. But, people had a lot of very intricate zombie plans, some of which just didn't pan out, and a lot of people had very loose zombie plans which didn't pan out either. Sort of the go north, which hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people did. Go north and the zombies will freeze during the winter, which they did, but the resources became immediately scarce because no area is designed to support that many people without supply lines. You have all these people effectively running into national parks and winter wastelands expecting to be able to survive when they really have no idea how to do it. Whereas I definitely knew that we were going to be scavengers, going from place to place, but the ability to barter was something that I hadn't really thought about the whole implications of. We eventually realized that was really, the ability to go, the ability to move people was really our strong point. But in the end, or, in the beginning, not in the end. In the end, yes, it was. In the beginning, it wasn't even on the menu. It wasn't, I never thought, we'll be able to pick people up at one little settlement and take them to another. We'll be passing through, and we'll be, trading or whatever with the people that we find, and we'll be accumulating people, we would hope. But acting as a transit service wasn't something that crossed my mind. Then it was acting as a freight carrier or a mail service or things like that. We were handymen, which is sort of what we planned on doing, going around and spreading the wealth and helping people with things. But being a common carrier was not something that we had originally intended on, and that was really where we pulled a lot of the weight, because that was what made us really special. To get from one place to another in a short length of time. Having the stuff that we did was nice, but it was not unique. You had a lot of people, you had sort of caravans that went around, and those were really hit or miss. You'd hear about a lot of people that would join up and then go missing. But a lot of the time, and because of that, a lot of the time, we were, hands down, the most reliable way to get from point A to point B. The issue is we didn't really have that much of a schedule, so people didn't know when to expect us. But we didn't have a schedule, so we didn't know where we were going next. So if we picked up a bunch of people, that would pay either in labor or in supplies or whatever, or in knowledge, to get to another settlement if they knew it existed, then we would go that way. The only major things that, that kept us from going certain ways were the availability of fuels, which, at least down south, far away from where everyone migrated to, you had fuel in pretty good supply. And I'm talking like wood, because, you can burn whatever. But wood or coal sometimes, charcoal even, anything. Fire logs. You would be surprised how many of those you come across. People just don't think to grab them. And they worked. They worked enough to keep us going. And failing that, we would trade for some of the more precious commodities. Or we would hire people to work in a mine, which, like I've told that story a couple of times. We did have a mine that was the Sami Train's coal mine. Didn't work, or didn't last very long, but it was nice to have. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you next week. If you have any questions, post them down below. Trainman out.